BookTube. You may have seen on the Bookish Bryants channel a video today where they announce an upcoming big BookTube event for November, New Worlds November. I'll leave a link to their video just in case you missed it. It's a big event that's coming up in November designed to celebrate science fiction. Another science fiction reading event for your calendar. Thought it'd be a good idea to get the word of it out, at least preliminarily, so that you can maybe set aside some time. The event is going on for the whole of the month of November. It's starting on the 1st, as Becky points out in her video. The classic Beckyism: the month starts on the 1st. Where everybody knows what she means. But anyway, it starts on the 1st, and it is weekly sort of headings, weekly themed headings for short form science fiction. So we're talking novellas or preferably short stories. Science fiction short stories in the month of November. New Worlds November will feature one heading for 1 week will be aliens, another will be technology or robots or AI, that sort of thing. Another will be, what was another one? Time travel, I believe. And then the final one is post-apocalyptic or dystopian. And where you find short stories, canonical, new, otherwise, or maybe short novels or novellas, and read about them in the month of November. And we're going to have a large group of co-hosts. I'm using the word we, so I'm probably letting you know ahead of time that I'm one of them. There are lots of others. You're going to love it. You're going to love the lineup. I'm hoping that we get to do a lot of interactive stuff. Zoom chats and whatnot. That'd be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, things are always coming and going here at Hyde Cottage. Literary matter of one kind or another. I subscribed, for instance, to Asimovs and Analog, and I regularly buy the magazine of fantasy and science fiction at the newsstand. And I'm going to have to restart buying Asimovs and Analog at the newsstand as well, because my subscription didn't last very long. I sent them the money. They cashed me check. They sent me a couple of issues, and then they sort of lost interest in fulfilling their end of the bargain. So I'm no longer getting those new issues, and I want them very much so. I want the second half of 2021 in those periodicals. They're square-bound science fiction periodicals that get tons of short stories, letters, book reviews, nonfiction articles, that sort of thing. That's been going on for a long time. The one of the impetuses behind the whole format of New Worlds November this time around, who knows, next year we may concentrate on massive works of science fiction. But the whole impetus this time around stems from the fact that science fiction, as we really know it and understand it, largely has its origin in the short story form. I mean, people will look at H.G. Wells and they'll look at Jules Verne, but the place to go for the kind of science fiction that can no longer be called science fantasy, Verne and Wells and whatnot, they did things that could just as easily be called science fantasy. They might not have liked the implications of that, but the more close wedding of science with science fiction only happened as a result of the pulps and the square-bound magazines that inherited that mantle, where you have writers that not only assume a degree of scientific literacy on your part, but exercise one themselves. That kind of science fiction has gone on to dominate the bestseller list. It's gone on to provide source material for 100 movies, but that stems from short stories. And it's still a thriving thing. If you like science fiction and like the constant flow of new ideas that science fiction is known for, you ought to consider subscribing to a science fiction periodical. The three major ones in the United States are Asimovs, Analog, and the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. And they would, all three of them, welcome your subscription money. I can't any longer vouch for them actually delivering, but they could use the money anyway. But one way or another, in between when we were brainstorming about New Worlds November, and now when I have the sort of tentative green light from the Bookish Bryants to make an announcement video of my own, I got some of those square-bound periodicals that I'm talking about, only old. Only old. I have, for instance, 2 old copies of Asimov's science fiction. These are from the 1980s, and the reason you can tell they're old is because they still have the apostrophe S. The magazine dropped that, and that's not present anymore. This is just incredible. This is from 1986. And the roster here is Ian Watson, John M. Ford, Cherry Wilder, names vaguely familiar in booktube terms, Nancy Kress, John Barnes, Joe Haldeman, and this issue from December of 1986 has an editorial by Isaac Asimov. And then we have, this is 1987, still has the apostrophe S, and here we have. What's our roster going to be in this one? Orson Scott Card, Harry Turtledove, Tim Sullivan, another editorial by Isaac Asimov. Looks like this one has longer stories in it than the first one. Fantastic. Very happy to have these two very old issues of Asimov's. I myself I haven't formalized my plans for New Worlds November, but I have a feeling right now I'm leaning towards examining and talking about short stories in these periodicals, things that aren't in anthologies yet, or that never made it into anthologies. And as an extra bonus, they go the extra mile for nonfiction for New Worlds November. I'm strongly considering writing a science fiction novel for NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month in November. And if I do it, I want all the rest of you to do it as well. Why not go whole hog? Why not make November the month of science fiction when it's not the month of NaNoWriMo, when it's not the month of nonfiction November, and when it's not the month of a bunch of other things? I'm strongly considering the project I do for NaNoWriMo 2021 to be science fiction, just to go in line with New Worlds November. And I would like the rest of you to strongly consider that as well. I have a dream project in mind. I just don't know how possible it is. I have a facility for collaboration. A great deal of the fiction writing work that I've done in my life has been in collaboration with other people, usually uncredited. And one thing that I would love to do for NaNoWriMo, as far as I can tell, there is no rule against it for NaNoWriMo, would be to create a science fiction story and have us all be involved collaboratively. So your nonfiction, your NaNoWriMo is not 1,667 words a day to reach 50,000 words by the end of the month. Instead, your NaNoWriMo is your chapter of this ongoing story. So we start a story at 1,667 words, then it goes to someone in the group, they write their chapter, and that chapter goes to the next person. And that person writes 1,667 words. Then it goes to the next person, and then the next person, and then the next person. Now, either we could plot the story ahead of time so people have a general idea of where it's going, or we could see if we can make a coherent story without doing that. I did that once before, a very long time ago. I was in a round-robin collaboration like that started out as a labor of love. It started out just for fun. And the book that resulted from that, a long time down the line, once it had been polished by one hand, came about 10 spots away from being on the New York Times bestseller list. So it is possible to have a lot of fun and produce something worthwhile doing that. I would love to do that idea. I would love to have 10 people doing NaNoWriMo together on a collaborative project under one pen name. That would be awesome. But even if that doesn't happen, I'm still going to do, I think, science fiction myself for November. But in addition to these old Asimovs, I also got old fantasy and science fiction magazines. These are from the, I believe, the early aughts. Is that right? No, the mid aughts, the 2005, 2006. Here we have one for, this is the 57th anniversary issue, 240 pages. October and November of 2006. So what do we have here? Peter S. Beagle, Paolo Pasagolpi, who's just got more and more famous as time goes on, Jeff Ryman, Albert Chowdhury, Charles DeLint, Elizabeth Hand, Paul Doherty, and Pat Murphy. Fantastic. All right, and then we've got, let's see, here's this next one. Look at this. Look at the titles here. The first one is Abandon the Ruins. That's the lead title there. Great, evocative title. The lead story here by R. Garcia Robertson, who I've never read, is Kansas, she says, is the name of the star. That's the name of the story. Kansas, she says, is the name of the star. That's great. The title alone makes me want to read it. There's an art to titling things, and it's not well known in the 21st century. Who else we got here? These are names that I don't know. R. Garcia E. Robertson, Isabeau S. Wilsey, Stephen Popkes, Terry Bisson I know, Matthew Hughes I don't know, Robert Onapa, Jerry Seeger, Seeger, Heather Linley. Here you got another Charles DeLint, but I don't know most of these names, and that's going to be great. That's going to be fantastic to explore. And then the third one, the lead title isn't what did it for me. The lead title is Planet of Mystery, a very bland science fiction title by Terry Bisson. What did it for me in this one was the cover. What on earth is going on there? That centaur has an 8-pack and stripes. And that looks a lot like a Starfleet uniform. That is just a great cover. But who else we got in this one? Will be any names that I know? That'd be nice. But, in a way, I'm even more grateful if it's not names that I know. So Terry Bisson has the Planet of Mystery, the main story. Robert Reed, a staple of these periodical science fiction magazines, doesn't have a career as a novelist. Doesn't, as far as I know, have many or any collected story volumes. He just always shows up, and he's always the best person on the roster. Robert Reed's story is not to be missed, and he's in almost every issue of Asimov or Analog. I think. I don't have the recent ones to verify that. Matthew Hughes again. Michaela Rosner. That name sounds familiar. I think she did she do a series of fantasy novels set in a fantasy-charged Italian Renaissance? The Stars Dispose. Is that where I know her name? Michaela Rosner. Tony Sarowitz. Matthew Karate. Another Charles DeLint, and another Elizabeth Hand, but most of these names I don't know. That's fantastic. That's just incredible. So these all came to me sort of at random as an assortment while I was thinking about science fiction anthologies for New Worlds November. And you should be thinking of that too. Do you have any science fiction anthologies on your shelves right now? Do you have any Gardner Dozois volumes or old Terry Carr volumes, anything like that? And if not, does your bookstore, your used bookstore, have any? Does it? Or does your new bookstore perhaps have the latest issue of fantasy and science fiction, or Asimovs, or Analog? Start thinking about science fiction short stories. Either to rekindle your love of them, to revel in your love of them with a whole bunch of other people who love them as well, or to learn to love them in November. Just an extremely advanced warning shot across the bow that in November, among all the other things that are happening in November at BookTube, we're adding one more event. It's a very crowded month, but these are short stories. So they're not a whole lot of overhead for you. So mark it on your calendar. New Worlds November. Wait till you see the roster of booktubers that are co-hosting this thing. You're going to love it. And I'm going to get as many of these things as cross my path, as many science fiction anthologies as cross my path. That would be awesome. So anyway, that in the nature of echoing the Bookish Bryants announcement video, that's what this is for. Only with a yawning schnauzer in this. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.